How representative is the European Parliament actually? The Parliament is based on the principle of representative democracy, so it represents or makes present European citizens in the Parliament. But of course, in reality, it's a kind of proxy. We have 705 members of European Parliament. We have more than 400 million individuals, European citizens throughout Europe. There's also a principle of the representation of territory. This representation of territory is, however, disproportionate to the member states, meaning that there are specific quota for member states. Smaller member states are relatively overrepresented. The classical idea of one person, one vote is not really respected for the European parliamentary elections. The idea is really to make sure that smaller member states keep an important say within the parliament, otherwise they might be overshadowed by the big ones. The four biggest ones would otherwise have a stable majority within the European Parliament. So in practice, it means that a Spanish voter chooses a member of European Parliament that represents roughly 900,000 Spanish people, whereas a Maltese member of European Parliament represents more or less 10 times less persons. The European Parliament is also unique because it's a single chamber. It combines, in a way, political and territorial representation, which in other cases is often represented, the territorial representation, by separate chambers or houses like senates or equivalent bodies. Once MEPs are elected on the basis of 27 different national elections, they do not necessarily represent nationality, their national background in Parliament. They rather belong to specific political groups. And hence, the European Parliament is also based on, let's call it, the representation of political opinion or political ideas. National political parties are then grouped in transnational party groups in the European Parliament, which themselves are affiliated to European parties. This is a bit of a complex process, but it means that the European Parliament is made up of specific, let's call them ideologically or politically focused groups. So that means we have the socialists, we have the green environmentalists, we have left-wing groups, we have liberal, conservative and even radical right groups within the European Parliament. They all represent a specific political position of European citizens within the European Parliament. That doesn't mean that these groups are completely homogeneous internally. There are great differences still, but they give a kind of orientation also to the voter, what to vote for what kind of ideas do we want to be present in the European Parliament. Other forms of representation are equally important, even if sometimes perhaps less talked about. Think of gender representation. In the first directly elected European Parliament in 1979, roughly 17% of the elected members were women. By now, in the latest elections of 2019, that's about 41%. In reality, this means that the European Parliament is probably doing better than many other national parliaments in terms of gender representation. Yet another form of representation, really important, is that of youth representation. The average age of current members of European Parliament is 50 years old. 2 out of 3 members of European Parliament are between 41 and 60 years of age. That means that currently only 37 out of 705 members of Parliament are people under the age of 35. That's 5% of the total number of MEPs. This in itself shows also a large gap with the wider European population, where roughly 16% of the people is under the age of 35. This leads to the fact that perhaps the European Parliament doesn't pay sufficient attention to issues that affect young people, like housing or labor market. And so it's extremely important that more young people become spokespersons for the interest of current young people, for future generation. And having more young people in the European Parliament probably would also mean that young people become more favorable toward European institutions. They trust the Parliament more if more of themselves, in a way, are present in that Parliament. Another representation gap is that with regard to minority group representation in the European Parliament. According to data of the European Network Against Racism, only 4% of the MEPs has a different racial or ethnic minority background, in comparison to at least 10% of the overall European population. One example, there are 3 MEPs in the European Parliament of a Roma background.